Okay, welcome, ladies and gents, to today's live stream. And we just had a really crazy event actually taking place over the last 24 hours. I think it was probably the shortest trade war in history that we know of, especially between the US and another country. The Colombian president, I think, as they say, messed around and found out. So let's go over that, and I'll go over the message that came out as well about this whole situation, because it's almost unbelievable what took place. So let me give you the context to this then. Um, we all know the deportation flights, or the repatriation flights as they are being called, are going on at the moment. And as they've been happening, they've been landing at countries and they've been accepting them. But when two flights actually went to Colombia, and they informed them in advance, the Colombian authorities, that these flights were coming in carrying Colombian nationals, they were actually refused to land. So Colombia refused to accept these people back. Now, at the time, there was no reason given, but I mean, it's obvious. You only need to have a little bit of thinking capacity here and common sense to know, why would they not want these people back? It's obvious. These are some of the, because what ICE is doing at the moment is going after the worst criminals who are in the country illegally. So this is who they're going after. So if you were Colombia, would you want these people back? Absolutely not. You would definitely not want them back. So I think that's why the president refused the, I think there were C-17s actually, to land. Now, what actually came out afterwards was, he said, the Colombian president actually said, the reason he wouldn't accept them, Colombia, was because it was inhumane how they had traveled to Colombia, and he said it was inhumane. It wasn't comfortable for them. I'll tell you all the official stuff later, but this is just the gist of it for those of you that want the gist really quick. So he said it wasn't right, it wasn't humane. He was gonna, and then later on he said he was gonna send the presidential jet to come and pick up these people. It's all nonsense, of course. So this is how it started then. This came from President Trump. It was a message he sent out over Telegram. He said, I was just informed that two repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by Colombia's socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. I mean, this is not me saying it, by the way. I'm reading it straight from what Trump tweeted out. He said the denial of these flights has jeopardized the national security and public safety of the United States. So I've directed my admin to immediately take the following urgent and decisive retaliatory measures. Now, this is where it gets really crazy and really serious as to what he did. And I think this is setting the scene. And I'll tell you what CNN said as well. I mean, these people have just lost their mind. But what did they say? What did Trump do then? He said immediately emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the United States. In 1 week, the 25% tariffs will be raised to 50%. So that's the first thing. And that's what I'm going to focus some of the analysis on the video on, to show you the impact of why this worked. Because I was following the media and some of their coverage on this, and they're saying, "Oh, this was just a bullying tactic. He's, doing all these nasty things, and the United Nations needs to get involved, and all this other stuff." No, no, no. The people of the United States voted for this. This is not a surprise. It's not a, no one should be like, "Wow, what's going on? What's happening here?" No, this was policy measure. It was voted upon. He won the presidency, and now it's being enacted, right? So we'll talk about the impact of this as to why, and I'll give you a clue. It's something like 25 to 30% versus 0.5%. There's a clue for those of you who like to follow your economics here. The second thing was a travel ban and immediate visa revocations on the Colombian government officials, its allies, and all supporters. So again, pretty harsh. No wonder there was a quick U-turn on this. We'll talk about that in a minute. Visa sanctions on all party members, family members, and supporters of the Colombian government. So if any of the officials have, I don't know, children in US universities or anything like that, that means that those visas would be revoked and those children or family members would have to leave, okay? So this is the other thing. It's not just the economical, it's also the emotional aspect here. So this was very cleverly put together. Enhanced customs and border protection inspections for all Colombian nationals and cargo for national security grounds. And then here was a big one, IEEPA Treasury, banking and financial sanctions to be fully imposed. So this is about as hard as you can really hit any country. And then he said that, to finish a statement, these measures are just the beginning, will not allow the Colombian government to violate its legal obligations with regard to the acceptance and return of the criminals they forced into the United States. So that was the statement that came out. And as soon as I saw that, I thought instantly, okay, Colombia is either going to U-turn or they're going to try and put sanctions on the US and tariffs on their goods. But I mean, the U-turn that took place within hours was pretty unbelievable. So let's have a look at some of that then. I think it was something like 8 to 10 hours by the time that he didn't just do a U-turn, he even tweeted Trump's. Well, this was funny, but he sent this really bizarre tweet. I don't know if you saw the tweet I've just loaded up here, but he sent out this tweet which has been translated here. I've translated it all. The tweet's been seen by 30.8 million people, and it's really weird. Everyone that's read it has said it's extremely woke and liberal, left-wing sort of weird stuff here. But it was very bizarre, the stuff he put in this tweet here. Everything from how he finds it boring to go to the USA. And then he starts talking about people who he likes, Noam Chomsky and some other people. He talked about how there's fascists in the USA. He doesn't like Trump's oil. He went on this really big thing, really big rant. It is, if you want to read it, you'll find it as bizarre as I think everybody else has found it. But the next thing was he put out a statement. This came out very quickly. He said that the reason that he didn't accept them was because the plane wasn't suitable, like a C-17 or something. Why that wasn't suitable, I have no idea. When I was in the military, I would sleep on the crates, like the cargo crates, let alone having a chair. So I don't know. I think it was a load of nonsense. So he said that he's providing the presidential plane for the dignified return of his fellow citizens. Okay, yeah, I don't think that's what he's going to say when he meets these people. He went on to write this big letter, but he's talking about this new community as a participation in the extraordinary assembly of the community of Latin American and Caribbean states. This has been in 3 days' time on January 30th. And he said it's going to be discussing Trump's migration policies, the protection of human rights, and the strengthening of relations between these member countries so that they can, I don't know, somewhat fight against what is happening. Is this going to work? I don't think so. There's just no possible way. They don't have the economic power to fight against sanctions against the US. He also talked about the dignified conditions of these citizens, that they weren't dignified, the returns weren't dignified, the way they were captured was not dignified, all this stuff. We're talking about serious criminals here. That's who ICE is going after first, as we talked about in the previous video. They're only going after the most serious criminals first. So that's really it. It was a bizarre one. CNN went on the rampage with this. They've accused President Trump of being a dictator. That was the word they used 2 or 3 times. He's causing, his hardline approach is causing massive global disruption. Other countries don't like the USA anymore. It's going to cause issues for US citizens around the world. He's talking about Canada, Mexico, or they're talking about he's trying to steal Denmark from, sorry, he's trying to steal Greenland from Denmark, they said. He's making threats of military action over the Panama. I mean, I'm telling you this stuff because they really talk a lot of nonsense. They're very sore losers, I feel, here. And they're saying that this could affect foreign relations. It's going to strengthen China. You know, when they say these things, it's going to strengthen China. Exactly how is it going to strengthen China? They don't say, because they just come up with stuff and don't back any of it up here. So let me tell you why then they had to do a U-turn, Colombia. So I've pulled up from Trading Economics here the statistics. And the US exported goods are valued at about 17.5 billion a year to Colombia, while they import about 14 billion from Colombia. So a little bit of a trade, 3.5 billion. So nothing major at all, about 3.5 billion. So what does the US export to Colombia then? It's manufactured goods. It's also agriculture. So these are your main ones. It's things like beef, pork, wheat, corn, soybeans, cotton. So these are the agricultural products, okay? But what does the US import from Colombia? This is mineral fuels and oils. That's about 6 billion, so pretty significant. Flowers and plants. And I read this article, which was hilarious. And they said that because of Donald Trump, actually they just call him Trump or the Donald or weird stuff like that. They don't call him President Trump. They say because of Trump, people are not going to be able to afford Valentine's Day this year because they're not going to be able to afford flowers because of these sanctions, and he's going to ruin relationships. It could, these reporters, the stuff they come out with because they've got nothing else, I suppose. So yeah, cut flowers and plants valued at 1.7 billion a year. Precious stones and metals 1.45 billion. Coffee and spices about 1.2 billion. So that is really the comparison. It wouldn't have affected the US at all because they only export 0.5% of their goods to Colombia, but Colombia imports, I haven't got the exact amount, but I think it's somewhere around 30%. I think it's somewhere between 29 and 31%. So let's just call it 30%. They export to the US. So they would have been hit so hard it would have just crippled them. So that is why you saw this U-turn so quickly. Okay, I've got the plane. It was a C-17 Globemaster Mark III, which is absolutely fine to transport people. There's nothing wrong with that plane. It has seats in it, so we know that it was nonsense. But the president, Petro of Colombia, insisted that a Boeing 737-700 was required for the humane return of the citizens. Yeah, okay, of course it was. Let's see what else. Okay, so there's a lot of talk as well at the moment of these ICE actions that are being. There's all these legal groups trying to teach people who are some of the criminals or illegal migrants how to actually not get expedited. So this is really ramping up. You've got the usual characters as well funding this, paying for all of this stuff. It's the usual people. I don't even need to say names. You'll know who they are. And they're coming up with all these stories to pull on heartstrings. So they're saying that they've got one example of someone who was arrested who was an American citizen, but actually he was released 3 hours later. But you should see this story. You would think that this is the worst possible thing in the world, the way these stories are going on. More than 20 million views on some of these stories, but that's the thing. Unfortunately, there's going to be a couple of people that are wrapped up in this, which is very unfortunate, of course. But this is what's taking place. A lot of cities are fighting it as well, but it's not going to slow down. And talking of where is it here? I read this story today about, here it is. Let me just load this up so you can see this. This is out of the UK. we just found out through a Freedom of Information Act request that was done by a lady called Karen Appleton to Sherwell District Council about, and she's actually done quite a few, so it's quite interesting reading these Freedom of Information requests here. We've got a couple. Actually, it's just reloaded, but there's all of these requests that people are doing now because they're wanting to find out, well, where's all this money? Where's this £203,000 gone for this resettlement program and mobile phones and all this other stuff? So this is why this one's so crazy. This one was a fund that was set up for £1,000 per person for driving lessons in Banbury. But the council's gone back and said, actually, this was funded by the local government. So they're paying for all of these driving lessons and mobile phones and all this other stuff. It's so don't, it's not just the US, the UK has got this as well. Trump as well, getting rid of FEMA. He's been to 2 disaster zones. Actually, this was over the weekend here. And I was reading through some of the stories that people have been sharing. Some of the stories are just unbelievable. And I think it's obviously pulled on the heartstrings a little bit here because some of the announcements that are coming out now. So he accused FEMA crews of being unfamiliar with areas when responding to disasters. He wants to completely redo it or disband it. He also said that FEMA imposes rules and requirements on crews that aren't as good as what local officials provide, and he feels that the government should instead send the funding to governors to manage their own response to disasters. Except California from from the comments I'm reading here. He's not a big fan of the California one. Another one, he said again, double down on Greenland, really keen to get Greenland. And he says he doesn't even think that Denmark has any legal claim. They're investigating that at the moment. But he says we're going to have Greenland. The Gulf of Mexico has been renamed to Gulf of America. Mount McKinley has got its name back. There's a lot going on, ladies and gents. There's a huge amount going on at the moment. We're seeing a lot of the promises that were made on the campaign trail actually coming to fruition. So I think people who are still saying, I think he probably just said all these things to get into power, because I'm hearing that a lot, but he won't do them. I think people are going to get a bit of a shock, because already this is coming through. All the DEI stuff as well is happening very quickly. The policies with schools and children and all the gender policies turned around very quickly as well. There's a lot happening. There's a lot coming through, and I think it's only going to continue. So that's it. Make sure to subscribe if you are not already. Thanks so much for being online. Take care. God bless. I'll see you in a couple days.